Good morning. Welcome to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Carrie Topliff, and I serve as a member of the Board of Trustees. Our minister, the Reverend Thomas Anastasi, and worship associate Barb Finch will lead us in worship today. We're very glad that you're with us. This is a community of compassion and love. Together, we live life's questions. Our congregation is a safe place to feel uncomfortable. By that, I mean that we don't promise to supply each other with easy answers, but we do commit ourselves to be loving companions in which to engage the questions that draw us more deeply into mystery. We hope that if you're new to us and are seeking a spiritual home, you will feel welcomed by the members of this congregation and will feel inspired to share your gifts with us. If you're new, we'd like to get to know you after worship. Please join us on the patio to share coffee, tea, and conversation. Everyone is encouraged to read the Acorn Bulletin, which highlights the many ways that we create fellowship and put our values into action. Today, don't forget that Reverend Thomas is looking for questions which you will need to write on this card before the sermon, or there may be no sermon. Let us begin worship by lighting our chalice.
Welcome to this house of memory and hope. We come together as people have come together for centuries, for millennia. We come here to worship, to seek understanding, to honor knowledge, to garner wisdom to live by, and to find sustenance for our faith. We come here to give being to our identity as religious persons who dare to take the risk of questioning, of finding out about ourselves and our world, who we are and what we want to be. Religious persons willing to assume the responsibility for the direction of our lives. Religious persons seeking freedom from compulsion and freedom to become ourselves in a resisting world. Religious persons with real beliefs that will make a difference in the world. We come to this place thankful for this community, seekers together, encouraging one another, believing in one another. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your life's journey, and whatever it is that you are doing to make the world a better place, you are welcome to join us today. Come, let us worship.
Live Oak has a long history of treasuring the youngest among us. We love the bright faces, the squirming, wiggly bodies, the active minds and wild imaginations of our children and youth. We willingly share responsibility for loving and listening and guiding as our children grow. Some of us are called to engage with the children through religious exploration classes on Sunday mornings. Others love the opportunity to converse at game nights or other intergenerational events. And still others appreciate the wonder of youth from a safe distance. Casual observers, admirers, and cheerleaders who find other ways of offering support. Our children provide us with hope. They enrich congregational life at Live Oak and inspire us with the promise of tomorrow. But there are those among us who must be recognized for going the extra mile. Those who answer a deeper calling, whose spiritual path is inextricably linked with the nurturing of young souls. I'd like to invite Melanie Jacobson, one of those folks, forward. She's the director of our Religious Exploration Council, and she is going to lead us in our message today.
Well, we are so happy today to introduce to you our new Director of Religious Exploration. Tracy Goforth comes to us rich in experience with the RE program at our sister congregation downtown. There she has served as the Religious Exploration Coordinator. Tracy has a degree in journalism with a major in advertising. She is a certified yoga instructor. She and her husband and 6-year-old daughter live locally. As part of the DRE search team, I can attest to her commitment and passion for growing the RE program we will all be proud to champion and support. She is stepping into the shoes of a long line of excellent DREs, many of whom are here today. Like all of them, Tracy has her heart precisely in the right place, ready to love and guide our young ones on their spiritual paths. As the RE chairperson, member of Live Oak, and a parent of two who have grown up in this RE program here, I'm honored to invite our beloved interim DRE Gloria Liggett, our new DRE Tracy Goforth, and all of the children and youth of Live Oak forward for the official passing of the torch. Join me in welcoming Tracy and thanking Gloria.
Each child is coming forward with flowers in each hand. Flowers of thanks for Gloria and flowers of welcome for Tracy. As the flowers represent the uniqueness of each child, together they'll make beautiful bouquets for our cherished religious exploration leaders.
So how about a thank you for Gloria and welcome Tracy. And now, with their bouquets, Gloria gets to sit down and enjoy the service, and Tracy is going to go forth with our children. I'm sure she's heard that many times.
Human struggle is with what we do not know or understand. It is often difficult not to want answers, or even more difficult not to think that we have them already. May we experience what we do not know, not as an individual failure, but as an invitation to enter into community. May we seek not the true answers so much as the true questions, knowing that true questions make of our lives meaningful, even if sometimes restless journeys. Let us take a few moments now in silence to let the questions rise to the surface, to listen for the restless voices.
I want to thank John for his selections of music today. We Shall Overcome. I've never heard a better arrangement of that song. And also Lift Every Voice and Sing earlier in the program today. Thank you, John. Commemorating or thinking of 50 years ago this week when the 100,000 people gathered in the National Mall in Washington, March on Freedom. And maybe some of you remember what you were doing that day. Maybe some of you were actually there. Anybody there that day? Years ago, many Unitarian ministers were there on the occasion, and I've heard some personal testimonies from them, and it was quite a day. Quite a day. And you know, it's amazing to me that after 50 years, I cannot make it through that sermon without weeping. It has a power that continues to move the hearts and minds of people. If only the dream would come true. But it is a dream, and it's good to have a dream. You need to know where you're going to go and what you want to do. And I think it was a turning point in the history of the United States of America when it comes to civil rights and human rights. So I didn't share during the time, but I have a joy, which is that this week, Bob and I went on a honeymoon. And four weeks later, after the And then 32 years after we first got together, we went up to Monterey, and then we drove down on Route 1 through Big Sur, and it was a very, very good trip. And it was good to get away and kind of breathe. Okay, so today is an unusual kind of service in that I'm going to ask you to ask me questions. Maybe a question that you've always wanted to ask a minister. And so now's your chance to get all the answers there are to give. Now, normally in these, and by the way, would our greeters bring up any of the cards that people have filled out? And if you didn't fill out a card, well, that's too bad, because you're not going to get your answers. But normally in a service on Sunday, I spend probably 20 hours in preparation for it. The general rule is it's an hour for each minute of the sermon for preparation. And that may sound like it's not true, but believe me, it is actually true. So when I was thinking about today's sermon, which I don't even know what it is yet, I thought, how can I prepare for this? How can I get my ducks in order and be able to do this? And then I realized that actually I spent my whole life preparing for this day. And that all the years, 25 years of ministry and doing church work and being with congregations, I have been getting ready for this day, which is to present myself as a minister to you and to respond to your urgent and important questions. So I haven't seen the questions yet, and so I probably will want to edit them as we go through, but I'm just going to go through them and try to deal with it. Okay. And by the way, I forgot to tell you, you don't have to sign your name to these, but if you did, it's too late now. What process shall I use to make a good decision? That's a good question. What process should I use to make a good decision? Wow, I don't know that I can really answer that, but it's possible that it might help to know more about what kind of decision you're going to make. Are you deciding whether or not you want to marry somebody? Are you deciding whether or not to go off to school, to get a new job? And whatever the question is, or the decision is, would probably have something to do with how to approach it. One thing that I do sometimes, and I remember doing this when I was deciding whether or not to go to seminary. And I was 35 years old, halfway down the road. And so what I did, and Bob and I were together at that time, we made a list of all the reasons that we would go to seminary and then all the reasons that I would continue playing music professionally, which is what I was doing at the time. And it came down to one or two aspects on each side of those lists. And the one that made the decision had really nothing to do with going into ministry. And it was that if I did go to seminary, I would be going to seminary in Berkeley. And we were living in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the time. And Bob said, "We are going to Berkeley. I want to live in California." And that's what we did. And it was like the Beverly Hillbillies. We packed up a U-Haul truck and drove across the country. It took us 11 days to get across the country. And we drove into San Francisco, and I said, we've made it, we're here. But that was helpful to be able to just write down the pros and the cons of any kind of decision. But there are other ways to do it too. What is really governance? This This is a word that we've been throwing around the church here lately. Being new to UU, my question is, what is lay ministry and what does her statement mean? I don't know what her statement is, so that may not be easy to answer.
Turn it over.
Oh, in the most recent edition of the okay, this is the beginning of the question. In the most recent edition of the UU magazine, Jenny Coulter wrote, UUism doesn't yet have the practice in place of helping congregations develop their lay leadership to do the lay half of shared ministry, which is really governance. Being new to UU, my question is, what is lay ministry and what does her statement mean? Thank you for having me turn that over. It makes a lot more sense that way. Okay, I think that you all have been having conversations over the years about this idea of shared ministry. And shared ministry being giving away the items, the jobs that the minister has traditionally done and letting that go into the congregation in various ways. And one of the things I really liked that you all did in that process was to rename some of your groups. For instance, the membership team is called the Membership Ministry. And to me, this is a primary example of what lay ministry is. It's taking a job that needs to be done, that is worrying and thinking about and trying to imagine new and better ways to deal with membership issues here in the congregation. Taking that job, that task, and turning it into something sacred to do, which is a ministry. We also call our Good Relations team the Good Relations Ministry, and that's where people go who are in conflict with one another, with the minister, with whatever. You go to that ministry, and again, those are lay ministers on that team who are working to do something that needs to be done in the congregation. And they're lay people, and they're doing ministry. And there are many other forms of ministry. My first job in a church was as the janitor of the church. And that was in Oakland, California, when I was in seminary. And I started out at the bottom. I was the janitor. And I had some blue jeans that I wore to work. And one of my colleagues, one of my fellow students, wrote in crochet on the thing, Minister of Dirt. And that really affected me because I really think that a janitor is doing ministry. It's something, if a dirty church, a messy church, an unsightly church, is not going to be able to minister to the people who come there, and especially newcomers who come in. To see a beautiful place like this is a ministry all of its own. So there are many forms of ministry. And there's another one that is especially relevant to you sitting here today, and that is sitting in the pews or sitting in the chairs right here this morning is a ministry. It's so important. As Carrie said earlier, if you don't write these questions, we're not going to have a sermon. And that is, if you're not here, if we can't have the gathering of the people here, then we're not going to be able to have church. We're not going to be able to have a worship experience. It can only happen in community. And just walking in the door is a form of ministry, I think. I'm very, very sure of that idea. Well, that's really another issue, and that's something that we are working with on the board. Governance basically means how do you do things in a congregation? How do you govern yourselves? How do you make the thing happen in the congregation? And over the years, there's been a lot of study about that, and there are now some ideas about how this might be changed in the future. And so the board of this congregation has been studying a book called Governance and Ministry by Dan Hotchkiss, a Unitarian Universalist minister, and studying the idea of what governance is and how it refers and is in relationship to the ministry of the congregation. And in October, I think we decided, didn't we, we're going to have a conversation salon where we go into the details of the board's ideas about entering into what is sometimes called policy governance, or governance by the mission of the congregation, whatever that is. And so be sure to come to that to hear more details. It's a rather complicated thing, but it boils down to what is the best way to run a congregation? What's the best way to get things done? What's the best way to have issues that need to be addressed? How do you do those, address those issues? And so we want you to come to that and give your input on it. We spent a lot of work, and even in our recent board retreat, we spent some more time thinking and studying about the idea of governance. So that's what we're talking about there. This is a simple, good question that is on the mind of Barack Obama this morning, which is war ever justified? Is war ever justified? Barack is thinking a lot about that today. He really is. And I feel for him because he really is stuck in a hard place. He made the mistake of saying there's a red line, and if you cross that red line, we're not going to stand for it. And they did cross the red line. And so now he's got to figure out what to do next. And the justification of that is this issue of gassing people, using poison gas to kill people in the country. And I agree with him. That is beyond the pale to do that. The entire world after World War I came together and decided that that was simply something you do not do. You do not gas people with poison gas. And so Barack said, well, you know, if you do that, we're not going to stand for it. And so the evidence is that somebody did it, and that's part of the issue, is we're not really sure who did it, but, you know, it's probably pretty clear. This idea of a justified war or a just war goes back to the 20th century to Niebuhr, who was one of the great theologians of the century. And he also worked with a German minister and philosopher and theologian named Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was eventually hung by the Nazis for a murder attempt that he made on Hitler. Bonhoeffer was a pacifist, and yet he was part of a plot to kill Hitler. And so he wrote extensively on how that decision to participate in that was justified in his mind. And he came up with what is now called the just war theory, that there's sometimes a justification for war. The strict pacifists, as in for instance, the Quakers, the original Quakers, and there are other pacifist groups, the Jehovah's Witnesses are pacifists and won't go to war. And many of them do not have a red line. They don't have a thing where they won't go over, or they won't require someone to go over. And I think of myself as a pacifist, and I tried to get a conscientious objector status during the Vietnam War, and actually I did get it, although it wasn't exactly what I wanted. But in the process of it, they made me give them my just war theory. Under what circumstances would you go to war? You say you don't want to go to Vietnam? Well, would you ever go to war? And they came up with that great question: if you were alone in your house with your family and someone broke in, would you not shoot that person? If your family is at risk, the thing that you love most in your life is at risk. Would you shoot that person? And my answer had to be, I'm not sure what I would do, but I wouldn't shoot that person because I wouldn't have a gun. I don't believe in having guns in your house. And so, what can they say about that? And of course, they were trying to get me to admit that under certain circumstances, I would be willing to kill somebody, let's say, or to bomb a city. To this day, I don't believe that. I don't believe there are circumstances where I would have to kill somebody. There are things that I can do. There are things that I can respond with when something bad happens, even when it's something about my loved family, the people that I love. But I'm not going to kill people for that. I'm just not. So I don't think there is a justified war theory. This all came up during the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War at the very beginning. This whole question, why are we going to Iraq of all things? And the Bush administration said because it's justified that we go there, because they were part of 9/11, they have weapons of mass destruction, and we're going to go over there and take care of that. And the whole theological thing came up about a just war. And you see what happened. I guess we feel justified now that we've done what we did over there. Now, this is the best question of the day, I'm sure. I haven't read them all yet, but it says, why not? Yeah, why not? Oh, somebody thought about this ahead of time and actually typed it out. Question. Okay. For the first time in over 400 years, Protestantism in North America has dropped below 50% of the population. Did you read about that recently? Yeah, just recently happened. As a choice of congregations where people go to worship. Mainline churches such as Presbyterian, Lutheran, Baptist, Episcopal, Anglican, and especially Methodism have experienced a staggering decline in membership. And that's true over the past couple of decades, since the 1950s. How does impact Unitarian Universalism as a movement, and how can we gather in some of the disaffected? Great question, great question. The youth of these departed members have apparently given up on religion in general, and that's true. Actually, I'd love to ask you, and I think that in this coming year, when we're working toward having a new minister come next year, that we can begin to think of some of these questions. How can we, I hate to say it this way, but how can we take advantage of this situation? You know, people are leaving the mainstream churches, and where are they going? Well, here is a very sad piece of news. I know where they're going. They're going to these evangelical megachurches. And even they are losing compared to 5 years ago. But believe me, they are doing very well. In this week's Time magazine, there's an article about the General Assembly of the Assemblies of God, which is the largest Pentecostal denomination in America. They have 3 million members. 3 million members. And when they get together at their General Assembly, which was somewhere down in Houston or Austin or somewhere, they had 17,000 participants in their General Assembly. 17,000. The most remarkable thing was 40% of them were under the age of 25. 40% of that 17,000. And they had a picture of a worship service where it was this cavernous big room, and all of these kids were there, and I'm thinking, what in the world are they doing there? Why aren't they here? Where are the kids here this morning? By kids, I mean people under 40. That's a kid to me. Anybody under 40 in here today? We have any under 40s? And Dick wrote this very good question, and I think it's something that we should take very seriously, and the UUA in general is taking this seriously, and they're wondering what they can do to fill up that gap. We have some built-in problems. One of our problems is that 80% of people who are Unitarian Universalists grew up in another religion. So we're a religion of not come-outers, but come-inners. People coming into us from some other place. And that means there are very few birth Unitarian Universalists. And the ones that we do have, 80% of them leave the church and they never come back. 80% of our kids, the kids that were grown up in our congregations, I have two of those 80% in my family, my daughter and my son. And they have kids, and they are not Unitarian Universalists. They're not really anything, but she was at the wedding, and so was he, so I guess that's something. They at least walked in the door of the church, yeah. But, and so what do you do with that? We can't even keep our own people, let alone draw in people from another place. Now, we're right next door to a school that has how many people? 40,000 students? 20,000? Yeah, UCSB. 20,000. Okay. Why can't we get any of those people here? I mean, isn't it true that when you're in college, that's when you start thinking about things, and that many people give up their religion they were born with? And I think it seems to me that Unitarian Universalism offers something that's exactly suited to people who are questioning their spiritual identity and questioning the religion that was that they were raised with. And yet there seems to be this wall between this campus and the campus over there, whatever direction it's in, there. And I have an iPad and I broke it. I dropped it on the patio and cracked the screen on it. Don't do that. Do not do that. Anyway, I went online to find somebody to fix it, and there's a guy who lives in the campus, and he does this for a living. So I went over there to have him fix it, and it was the first time in a long time I'd been in it's not a dorm room, but it's a room where there's like 18 people that live in this house there. Right on the drag there were all the people that on the water. And I just got excited about that. I thought, wow, this is so cool to be back in school again. And you know, there was pizza cartons around and beer cans and all that. And it was really, really neat. And I thought, I just wish there were a way that we could bring that energy, that excitement, that whole idea of moving through life at high speed, you know, learning a trade or learning some very important career challenge. And can we do that here? And I invite all of you to meet with our membership ministry this year. And I think that we should all take some real time to consider this fact. Everybody in this room is a member of the membership committee. You are all members because you are all ambassadors in your own way to the world out there. When you walk down the street, you might as well have a neon sign that says you with an arrow pointing down at you, because you are that wherever you go and whatever you do. How can we take this, when we sang that song this morning, we laugh, we cry. I just said, this song is so much about who we are when we get together and we have this community. And there was such a good feeling in the room when we were singing that song. And I could see that some of you were really singing this sincerely. How can we take that beautiful feeling, that feeling of community, where people get together in love and in hope and in trust for the future of their time together. How can we get that out into the world? It's a challenge, and I invite us all to consider that. Here's one that has nothing to do with me, but maybe some of you. How do we get our egos out of the way? In order to find deeper spiritual connection. Boy, these are really serious questions here. I was hoping there would. Did anybody write a kind of a humorous one along the way? Yeah, egos out of the way. I have a theory about this. I have a theory about everything, but I have a theory about this, and that is my job in the world, and this has been true throughout my life, from the first time I picked up this accordion and played music in an old folks' home in Clyde, Ohio, and completely bombed. But from that day until this day, my job has always been that my theory is that I am a pipeline. I am a pipeline, a conduit of spirit, moving from spirit through me and into the world in whatever way. When I sing a song, I am a conduit. It's not, in many ways, it's not really me that's singing. There's something that's going through me and out into the world about that. I certainly feel that way about sermons. When I'm writing a sermon, I sit down and I'm thinking, okay, I want this to be about questions, let's say. And so what should I do? And any of you who are writers know this. It just appears. I don't know where it comes from. It's just like, oh, well, don't forget to say something about the da-da-da-da-da-da. And it just comes, and I keep saying, I didn't do that. I didn't say that. Where'd it come from? And it's because I think that for any artist in the world, and all artists are conduits in their own way, there's something that moves them. Maybe it's what the Greeks called muses. Your muse moves, and it moves through you, and then it goes out, and you have a Van Gogh painting, or you have Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Where did Beethoven's Ninth Symphony come from? Well, it came from Beethoven, but you all know that it's more than that. It really is more than that. And if I am a pipeline, this is the part that's the theory. If I'm a pipeline, sometimes the pipe gets clogged up. It's kind of like arterial sclerosis of the pipe, of the conduit. And things get in the way so that this movement doesn't happen the way it should. And you know what the primary source of the gathering in your arteries, that stuff that get plaque that gets in there. And what's the source of that? Is it cholesterol or fat or something like that? Okay. In my life, the conduit gets clogged up, and the substance that it gets clogged up with is ego. It's ego. It's when I write something down that sounds pretty good and say, you know what? I did that. I'm a pretty good writer, aren't I? I can do sermons pretty good, right? I can sing a song pretty good. Yeah, that's me. That's me. That's what I do. And the thing just gets clogged and clogged and clogged and clogged. And pretty soon, it can actually stop. And I think that for many people, it has stopped. The flow has stopped. Constant flow. So how do you get rid of plaque in your bloodstream? Do what? Lipitor. Yes, that's true. That's true. There's there's quite a few, and they really do work pretty well. What is it? Simvastatin? Statin. Yeah, statin.
So we need some spiritual Lipitor.
Yes. Okay. So what would that look like? What would spiritual Lipitor look like? Yeah.
You could adopt a kitty and take care of it.
Right. Yes, right. Actually, somebody over here said, maybe you did, exercise. My cholesterol was way over 200. It was 270 or something like that some years ago. And so the doctor said, okay, we need to put you on drugs and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, I really don't want to do that, but what would you think of this idea? What if I intentionally started exercising to lose weight? Wouldn't that help if I just weighed less and ate less and tried not to eat so many fatty things and cholesterol things and all that? He said, yeah, that would help, but this is much easier. You just take a pill and it's done. But I didn't take a pill, and I did start exercising. And over the course of time, I lost 40 pounds and also Metamucil. There's never enough praise for Metamucil, really, because it just sucks up the cholesterol and takes it down the pipeline. Yeah, and so my cholesterol went down to 170. I lost 100 points in that scale, and it was through exercise. I think exercise is the answer to everything. So this one question: why exercise? Exercise. Okay, I can't believe how serious these questions are. What is the most spiritually rewarding aspect of being a UU? Good question. The way to answer that is, why are you here today? Is it because you like to question, to think about things and wonder about things? I think for a lot of people it is about education. It's about learning, it's about knowledge, it's about expanding your horizons, expanding your mind, and also expanding your spiritual horizons to imagine new possibilities of what spirituality might mean for you. And I think that that's what we do as Unitarian Universalists. We come together in community and we encourage one another to spiritual growth. That's what we say in our principle statement. We encourage one another to spiritual growth. And I like that. And I think of all things, that may be the reason that I'm a Unitarian Universalist, is that I can come here and not be judged by you people, but be encouraged by you people to say, we can all do better. We can all imagine a better world, and we can work toward making the world a better place, but we can also imagine a deeper and more fulfilling spiritual life in ourselves. And we can encourage one another to spiritual growth. I'm going to end with this when we run out of time, but I'm going to save these, and maybe they'll show up in a minister's column in the newsletter or something down the line. But this is the last one. What is the meaning of life? Just a basic, simple question. What is the meaning of life? And whoever wrote this put a thing on it at the end. And he said he said the answer could be serious or not. So I would recommend to you that you go out and rent a movie from Monty Python, and it's called The Meaning of Life. And actually, I think it's one of the best movies ever made. It basically says, well, is it food? How many people do you know who food is the reason they exist? Or sex, or the lack thereof, or any of those things. And it's a really great movie that ends with this scene of a death scene where death, the guy with the hood and black, comes to visit this family who had just eaten some bad salmon mousse. He said, I've come to get you here. We're leaving now. And they said, no, I haven't lived yet. I haven't had enough time to do all the things I want to do. He says, you got to go. It's time to go. And for me, that was the whole movie right there. It's like, are we going to wait until death shows up at the door before we decide that we're actually going to live our lives? So I would say, for me, the meaning of life is in the living of life, of waking each day. And by the way, I wanted to comment, during the meditation today, the kids were out in the yard out there, and there was that happy laughter and all that. That's the meaning of life, right there. That's the meaning of life. There's just no more beautiful sound than those kids playing in the churchyard. So that's it. Now we're going to ask another big question. Are we going to be able to get through this song that we're going to sing?
So folks, we're going to do number 1030, and I think it's going to be up on the screen. Thanks to Marty. It's so awesome to have this audio-visual thing, Eric and Marty.
Right.
So grateful for everything you're doing. So.